Touré, welcome to Win Today. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. And what a phenomenal name. I love that Win Today title. That just excites me just hearing it.
Yeah, you know what? We could even start here just to have a little fun. The title of the show came from the fact that I think we have it within our wherewithal, and as followers of Jesus, to accumulate relational equity, spiritual equity, maturity, emotional health, mental health in such a way that when tomorrow becomes today, when troubles come our way, we can make withdrawals upon that account and just keep moving forward in life. So that's sort of where the name came from.
I love it, and I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously, the idea there is being proactive every day, in building that reserve account so that when life is life,
Yes.
you've got something to fight back with. I love that.
Well, thank you. In fact, that's a great place to spring off of and just sort of dive into the conversation here today, because the focus of our conversation is around your new book, Balance. But I want to ask this, and this is sort of your statement. If finding balance is the longing of every human heart, how did you diagnose a lack of balance in your own life? I'd love for you to just take us back inside the backstory.
Certainly. Well, I think for me, not unlike most people, balance has kind of been this thing that everyone's trying to achieve. It's funny, you've never heard someone say, "Oh, my life is so balanced." It's always, I'm trying to get there, and it seems like this this out of reach goal all the time. And I was one of those people who felt the same way until I realized that balance wasn't exactly what people thought it was. I discovered that balance is not this pursuit of learning how to give pieces of yourself to important things in life. I'm married. I've got children. I've got companies. I've got nonprofits. I'm a pastor. I've got all these things. And so how do I effectively give pieces of myself to all those things? And I realized that that's a mistake. I can't give 10% of me to my wife,
Right.
or 10% to my kids or to my company. I have to give all of myself. And so I realized balance is really not about giving pieces of yourself away, but is becoming all of yourself. And then in turn, as you discern where the need is the greatest, giving all of yourself to that particular need. And so I kind of demystify balance. Balance is about doing all things well. When we think about Jesus, that's what it says of him. He did all things well, and he had various disciplines. And for me, I think the breakthrough for me happened actually when I was beginning to write this book. I had the idea of the book in 2018, started writing the book. The book was actually due October 2020. And I started writing, got halfway through the book. My agent tells me, "Touré, this is not your best." The last thing you want to hear after you have got, third halfway through the book. And she was right. And I realized that I was writing from a lesser version of myself because I hadn't taken the proper steps to be balanced. And so I scrapped the book, started over, and unbeknownst to me, that this pandemic would come, which meant that balance in 2020, 2021 would be a completely different conversation than balance in 2019. I experienced how unproductive or less productive I was in my own life being out of balance, and it changed the way that I perceive balance.
You totally scrapped the book.
Started over. That was it. I've got about 28,000 words in my computer somewhere. And here's the thing, Chris. It wasn't that it was bad.
Yeah.
It just was not my best.
Well, that's interesting, and I want to get under the hood of this a little bit. You made mention a few moments ago, like we give 10% of ourselves here, we give 10% here. How do we know? Like, how did you know? Oh, I'm actually only giving this domain of my life a portion of my best. How do we discern that?
I tried it. It sounds good. Okay, you know what? on Monday, I'm going to do this with my kids. On this day, I'm going to spend this time with my team. I'm going to take my wife. It sounded really good. But what happened was, because I hadn't worked on my insides, I was giving them a lesser version of me. So this whole idea of divvying yourself up and covering all the bases, it sounds good. Time management, work-life balance, it all sounds good. And there's a place for those things. Yeah. But I was giving 50%, even though they were getting equal amounts of time, they weren't getting their whole dad. So I realized, I'm taking my son out and I have no energy and I'm hardly present and I'm exhausted and I'm tired and my thoughts aren't clear. And it would have almost been better for me not to spend that time with him, but to spend that time doing what I know that I need to be balanced, so that when I do show up, it's not the quantity of time that I spent, but the quality that makes the difference.
That's really brilliant. And for folks listening right now, I think what I wanted to do, Touré, in asking that question is create almost sort of measurables that people could look at themselves in a mirror and go, oh, exhaustion is one, short temper is one, lack of energy is one. And I think you really helped articulate some things that we all can apply to our own lives to say, okay, if we're lacking this thing called balance, here are a few things that we can look at in our own lives. Because, and the reason I say this is because I think too many people today are waking up unusually anxious and unusually exhausted, and it's happening for so long, it's been happening for so long, that they consider it normal and they don't even remember when that exhaustion started. And I think that's sort of the underpinning of the conversation that I want to get after.
That is completely correct. And I am not exempt from that. I got up a few days ago anxious, but what I do differently now than what I did before. So in times past, I would go and try to fix whatever the things were that were making me anxious. And so if it were something going on at work, okay, if I send this email, or if I, pivot my strategy, or if I do that, then I'll deal with the angst. Now, no. Now I go and I get still. And in the book, I talk about my disciplines, my daily disciplines. No, before I even attempt to attack or address whatever it is that's making me anxious, which is what I used to do, I stop, I pause, I get myself together, I remind myself of truths that posture me in the place and the state of balance. And here's why that's important. You can't cure anxiety with anxiety. You can't overcome what is making you anxious while being in the state of anxiety. There's a debate whether or not fear works for you. And some say, well, fear does work for you because it heightens your senses, and you go into fight or flight, and you're more aware. And I can see the merit of that. The only problem is negativity will never serve you best. It never serves you best. That it puts you in this, fight or flight essentially says that I don't possess something, and if I don't do something, then this danger, this defeat, this loss will come upon me. So I am working for something, as opposed to being balanced is completely different because I am working from abundance. Abundance says that I have this. Abundance says I am going to overcome. Abundance says all of my needs have been supplied. It is just a matter of perceiving them and stepping into them. So anxiety doesn't heal anxious things. And so now what I did the other day, and this is new, relatively new for me, is I stop, I pause, I gather myself, I work my disciplines, and now from an abundant place, I go and I address whatever needs to be addressed. But it's a completely different shift from what I used to do in the past.
Stay here. In the book, you talked about the deficit mindset and then fear motivations. Can you unpack this even further? This goes along with what I said. So many people today are waking up every day with this slow buzz of anxiety, and they're unaware of its beginnings. Then we posture ourselves throughout the day unknowingly with a deficit mindset and a fear motivation. Folks, I want you to lean into this because this could be huge in reframing. We're not just talking about work-life balance here, Touré. I think that conversation is overdone. We're talking about getting under the hood of the heart to catalyze transformation that will change our lives to see ourselves and our circumstances in a diametrically opposite way. So take us there.
Masterfully put. I talk about that in the chapter called The Gift of Rest. And when I think about my life, nothing significant in my life ever happened from the place of rush or the place of stress. It all happened from the place of rest. So what do you mean rest? Do you mean, you're physically rested, you came back from a vacation? That's all wonderful and that's fine, you should do that. But that's not the rest that I'm talking about. I'm talking about resting in the posture of the fact that I have no lack. King David wrote that beautiful psalm in Psalm 23, and he said, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." If you unpack that in its original context, he's literally saying, I have no lack. In other words, I don't even perceive lack. And so the deficit mentality is when we approach life and approach a circumstance from a place of without. I don't have this. And I just believe that everything that we need in life before we got here was set up for us in this life. So it's not a matter of do I have it? Is it there? It's a matter of posturing ourselves and position ourselves to receive what's there already. So we're not working to get, we are working to step into what we have already been given. So the deficit mentality approaches, it's totally fear-based. It works hard because it says, if I don't work hard, I am going to die. I am going to starve. I am going to miss something. Yeah. The abundance mentality says, I'm going to work hard because that's what great people do. Great people work hard and they come into alignment with everything that's already there. The challenge, I know people that are rich, but have no peace. And they are rich. And we look at them and they have what seems to be an amazing work ethic. You're like, whoa, man, your work ethic is through the roof. And there's nothing wrong with having good work ethic. But what's driving them is the reality that everything is there already driving them? Or is there a fear driving them saying that if I don't make another 10 million or another 25 million, then I am going to fall off? And I've seen that, and they're never settled. It's never enough. A million, a billion, it will never be enough because they haven't settled into this place of rest, which says, I have no lack. Everything I need is set in front of me. All I have to do is with peace and with posture and with balance, walk forward and lay hold of it.
How did you in your own life found this in your deep belief system, Touré? Because I think for some people who have experienced repeated loss, repeated disappointment, they might be saying, that sounds good for you, but you don't know my story. And every time I've gone there or tried to reframe my mindset, something else is just, the wheels have fallen off again. What do you say to those people?
I completely agree. I would begin by saying I am sympathetic to your process. And I notice I said empathetic or sympathetic. I said empathetic. I said sympathetic, but not empathetic. Yeah. I sympathize because I've been there. I was born in a single family home. I was raised by my mother. I remember when she bought her first car for $500 and it lasted for about a week and that was it. I remember riding on the bus. I remember, not living in the best neighborhood. I remember, being exposed to so many things in life. I remember setback. I remember going through a divorce, a painful divorce. I remember all sorts of traumatic things happening in my life. So I get trouble and I get setbacks and I get the feeling and the notion of when will good ever happen for me? Will something meaningful and powerful and extraordinary ever be my portion? I get that. But what life has taught me is that life is an unfolding. If you, I'll take it deeper. When I was 18 years old, I remember my mother threw a birthday party for me. And there's an old video in that birthday party of me saying, I'm so glad that I made it to 18. At 18 years old, my son is 19. He has no concept of that. So what I'm getting at is what I have seen through the varying stages of life is that life unfolds. And if you draw conclusions in varying stages of your life about the future of your life, you will make a mistake. If you are putting a period where God has put a semicolon, you're making a mistake. And I would rather be optimistic and be wrong, than to be pessimistic and be wrong. And so I would say, if you have breath in your body, if you're breathing right now, that means that your finest work hasn't been seen yet. And you can and will. Here's another thing I say in the book. Provision is it's a very elusive concept. And abundance even is a very elusive concept, because most people think abundance means I have everything I need all at once. But that's not the way life distributes abundance. Life distributes abundance as need. And so as needed. And so I may not have had this, but when I look back on my life, I had that. I may not have had a dad, but I had a pastor, I had an uncle, I had somebody around. You don't always get to choose where your provision comes from, but if you take a look back, you'll see that you were provided for the entire time. And that's what I mean. And so I have no lack. I've come to this place in my life after going through all those things that I described, realizing that at every step, my needs were met. And all those things, ironically and almost supernaturally, have actually worked together for my good.
That's so good. Trey, I think one of the questions that jumps off the page at this point for me, because all the listeners are obviously walking throughout life, and we're all living in this postmodern world where self-help and pop psych is just so prevalent. And we hear this phrase often, becoming our best self. Mm-hmm. It's sort of cliche, and it's sort of without legs, if you will. It's sort of undefinable. What does it mean to you? Let's unpack that phrase, because I know you use the phrase in the book, but I want listeners to have a firm foundation about what this really means inside the context of this conversation.
That's so beautiful, and it really even ties into your last question. Mm-hmm. What I've also learned is, as I became better, my life became better. As my insides evolved, as my thinking evolved, as my degree of wholeness evolved, everything around me evolved. And so when I say best self, I'm under the belief that we were created to be masterpieces. I really just believe that. I'm a person of faith, as you know, and I just believe that God does not make junk. I just don't believe it. And I believe that the highest pursuit of life is to find out, God, what did you have in mind when you made me? If I am created in your image and in your likeness, which means that I was created in the context of divinity, then what exactly does that mean? So I'm always reaching forward, aiming to work my way back to this brilliant identity. And so for me, your best self, watch this, at any given moment is you being a version of you that is free from shame. And you talk about this a lot, free from fear, free from the sense of inadequacy, free from this notion of not being enough. All of these self-deprecating, self-degrading mental assaults. When I am free from level to level of these things, I progressively become a better and better and better self. And since, I don't think that we fully arrive permanently at that in this life, but I believe that there are states. I believe we have glimpses of it. And I believe that's what balance is about. Balance is when you align with that version of you in a season, your best is produced. Some people call it the flow. You see an athlete do something crazy. You'll see someone make a catch and their whole body is contorted. Like, how did that happen? Or, Tiger Woods, there was the 20th anniversary, some anniversary of him making this crazy chip shot in golf. And you're like, how did that happen? And Tiger would probably say, I was in a zone or I was in a flow where his best emerge. Well, I think that balance is very similar to that. As we align with the highest and best version of ourselves that we were created to be, free from all of those things that hold us back, then we're able to produce at a higher level. And the challenging part with that, however, is that we have to continue to pursue it, because in the morning I might wake up anxious again.
Well, I love that, Touré. In fact, let's just hit the target here. Balance, you wrote, is not a discipline, an activity, or an exercise. Balance is a place. Tell me more, because people could interpret this as just being hyperbole, but it's not. It's very, very tangible.
For sure. I used an analogy in the book about the midnight sun. And the midnight sun is a phenomenon that takes place in certain parts of the world where the sun never goes down for extended periods of time, which means that there is always light. Symbolic of clarity and good. I believe that in the place of balance, and we have to get there, it is very much like that. There's nothing but truth there. It's light. Who you are, what is projected onto you from the perspective of identity is accurate and true. I talk about night, and night being this force that comes upon you, that tries to cloud who you are, and it makes you doubt yourself and all these things. And so there is, I believe, and even as a spiritual man, I believe that there is a dimension where nothing evil, nothing negative, nothing untrue can exist. It is all light, the truth of who you are, the truth of what you have, no fear, there's a place. And the journey to balance is arriving at that place so that you can function from that place, make decisions from that place, make abundant mindset decisions as opposed to fear-based decisions. So it's not a discipline. You have disciplines that you should employ to get there. It's not an activity. No, this is a place that where the sun is always shining, where truth is always being communicated to you, and in my estimation, is one of our most worthy pursuits in life.
Yeah, talk about that a little more. If balance is a place, that infers that we have a journey toward it. Where does this trek take place?
I believe that it begins in the soul. In the book, I break down the difference between the spirit and the soul. And listen, that is a fine line of demarcation, but it is, you can understand it. If you think of spirit, we are spiritual beings. We're in these bodies, but our bodies aren't thinking. Our bodies aren't, you don't love someone with your body. You know what I mean? You love someone with a different part of you. So it's, if you removed all of the skin off and all that, what you would be left with is your spirit. Your spirit is who you are. I met my wife, and my wife is beautiful, but what drew me to my wife was her spirit. What was, when she opened her mouth and she began to communicate her thoughts, how she saw things, that was her spirit introducing itself to me. The soul is a much deeper place. Your soul is your seat. It is the seat of your life. I talk about how your soul is the most authentic part of you. You can't fake your soul out. Your soul
true.
is what it is. And the soul longs for balance. I think a lot of people, because soul awareness is different than self-awareness. Soul awareness it's much deeper. I think that because people aren't aware of their soul, they try to fix the longing of the soul with things that only address the longing of the body and perhaps even the spirit. And
Oh.
so my soul is uneasy, my soul is unsettled, so something is wrong, peace is evading me. And so I say, well, let me go and get on social media, or let me call a friend, or let me watch a movie, or let me have a drink, or let me do drugs, or for some, let me have sex. I'm after something, but I don't know where this void is or where this void is coming from. And so I end up in these sometimes even addictive cycles, trying to appease, trying to satisfy a part of me that I haven't identified. The soul wants balance. The soul is the most authentic part of you. The soul is drawn towards balance, like a compass is drawn towards north. It wants to be whole, and wholeness takes place. The deepest wholeness takes place in the soul. And so the journey to balance is connecting with your soul. How do I do that? One of the things I have to do, I have to silence the noise. I can't even hear my soul because life is so noisy. And so I have to find stillness and begin to identify. And if you connect with your soul, and the book walks you to doing so, your soul will actually guide you to balance.
It's really good. I really appreciate that because self-awareness is front and center. It's gracing every conversation today, but this is a page turn on a very important topic. Now, I want to stay here on spirit and soul because wholeness, as you've been talking about, is in fact the integration between spirit, soul, body. No one domain functions well without the other. That is an integrated life. But pop, psych, willpower-driven self-help just doesn't go here often, Touré. We talked about this before I hit record here today. I want to hear your thoughts on how a broken and wounded spirit affect our drive for life, and then to bring it into this conversation, our ability to go to the place of living from wholeness and balance.
Absolutely. Well, brokenness, and we all have experienced brokenness in one, fashion or another, and it does dictate how we move through life. I know this firsthand, my father not being there, and so, I had, any male that came around, I had a difficult time standing up to them, and it was just so brokenness, it shapes us. It determines, how we show up in life. And when that soul is broken, and we've seen it, even as a pastor and ministering to people, I can recall, a young lady whose father, told her that she was dumb, and she's brilliant. I mean, the girl is extremely brilliant, very talented, but lived with this need, well, even beyond the needs she has, she lived with this concept that I'm not smart. So she wouldn't even trust her own decisions. She wouldn't even trust her ability to make decisions. So brokenness is a real thing, and it has to be addressed. And it's not simply mind over matter. I do believe in thinking positively. That's all wonderful. That's I was taught that. Growing up in church. Whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely. Think on those things. So it definitely has a place. But I don't think that you can positive think your way into the healing that your soul needs.
That's exactly right.
I just don't.
No.
I think it has a shortcoming.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I just love to dive more into your story and your application of even the concepts we're talking about today, because the last 2 years of life for all of us have not simply been an interruption, but instead, I believe, a total disruption. I'd love to know, Touré, what adjustments have you had to make in order to continue to bring your whole self to the day to pursue balance from a place of wholeness and integration?
For sure. Well, my wife challenged me one day, and we were probably about a year and a half through in the pandemic, and I was kind of talking to her about how I was feeling, and she said, Toure, you really need to, maybe you need to tend to your mental health, and she said mental health. And I was like, oh, wait, no. My mental health is fine. I just, there's this stigma, and, but she was right. And once I got over the stigma and ego and all that kind of stuff, I realized she was right. I had to begin to consider that it is impossible for us to navigate through the times that we're in and facing things that we have never faced before in our generation and believe that it did not have some sort of negative or diminishing effect on my mental health. And so to be aware, I gave myself permission to be aware of where I am. One. Two, I begin to no longer tolerate imbalance. I talk about the 5 signs of imbalance in the book. And, in times past, if I'm honest, I used to be out of balance, but, it wasn't as big of a deal to me. If I can still get my work done, if I wasn't entirely falling apart, then it's okay to live with a little bit of imbalance. I have a zero tolerance for being out of balance. And so if I'm, some of the signs are, weariness, declining a thought life, loss of vision, you don't have clear vision, stagnation. When I begin to, and I got a list of things. When I experience that or when I feel that, I immediately address it, literally stopping everything if need be, because I realize that if I am going to thrive in these times, I've got to be my best self. And so I've worked more disciplines. I'm a lot more disciplined daily. The disciplines that I talk about in the book, I work them every single day. When you work out, when you exercise, they say, 4 to 6 times a week is good. Not when it comes to me, not when it comes to prioritizing my wellness and my well-being. We don't know what a day holds. What if the day that you decided to take off from doing the disciplines that help to manifest your best self, there was an opportunity to serve somebody, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to be there for your kid or your spouse, that because you weren't aligned, because you were not aligned in balance, you missed. I just value myself and my responsibilities too much to not take it seriously. So I think my day-to-day disciplines, my self-examination, my immediate response to imbalance certainly have gone to a new level since these crazy times we've been in for the past couple of years.
It's so helpful. And the first thing I heard you mention when I asked the question was this: awareness. So for people listening today who are unknowingly overstressed, overwhelmed, they live with this overwhelm and they're like, I don't even know anything other than this. How do we cultivate awareness? Like, what did you do? What do you do? What do we do to prioritize being aware? And this, I think, it tips its hat to what we talked about regarding self-examination, soul awareness. But I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I think what I do is I like to create time to check in with myself. It is important. Another buzzword that's out right now is mindfulness. And depending on who you ask, there are a zillion definitions. My definition of mindfulness is minding what you are minding. In other words, knowing, managing, paying attention to what's going on in your head. I see my head as precious real estate, and therefore no squatters allowed. know the things, the thoughts, the ideas that are going to occupy the precious real estate of my mind have to be qualified, proven, tested, and worthy. And so for me, awareness is about making sure that I know what's happening in my head, because my feelings are connected to what I'm thinking, and so I'm paying attention to how I feel, and then I'll journal. So for example, let's say, because you're right, you can be living in dysfunction for so long that dysfunction seems normal.
Exactly.
And I understand that, and I've been there. And this can happen, and this can continue to happen if you never stop and take inventory of where you are and what you're thinking. And so to the person that wants to, break out of it, or wants to maybe even check and see if they're in the healthiest place, I would challenge them to stop and to take inventory, to create space in their day, and listen, if it doesn't work, you don't have to do it anymore, but I guarantee you it will work. Take space in your day and sit with yourself and begin to ask yourself, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? And write those things down, and you will be surprised to discover, I bet, at least one thing that you're thinking that is not worthy of you. There's this, here's a tool. If you Google the feelings wheel, we use that in our house.
Yes.
Do you use it?
Every day. I'm like, I'm feeling
Yes.
this. What's behind this? Yeah, keep going.
Exactly. How am I feeling? What thoughts are associated with it? So I guess that there was a process. What am I feeling? Okay, what's the thought connected to that feeling? And then the other question is that thought worthy? If that thought does not affirm me, if it doesn't speak well of me, if it doesn't speak well of my future, if it doesn't have hope in it, if it doesn't have redemption in it, it is not a worthy thought. And I have to, and sometimes obviously you will have to go deeper and try to figure out where that thought came from, and are there things in your life that contributed or constantly contribute to regularly thinking that thought. That's where therapy comes in, and your accountability circle, people who are committed to you being your best you. But here's the thing, it's work, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, I love that. Mindfulness, metacognition, really thinking about our thinking. But we look at a scripture like Romans 12. I mean, that is cognitive behavioral therapy in a nutshell, that we would be transformed by the entire renewal of our minds. And so this is a really big deal. In fact, I'd love to even just stay there and to create some rhythms for people to install into their daily lives. And I want to look through your own practices. You said this in your book, quote, "In order for anything to qualify to be a part of my daily routine at the very highest level, it must fall into one of three categories." Walk us through each of the three, Toure.
Absolutely. The three categories are things that sustain territory, things that gain territory, and things that are of service to others. And so I'm the reason why I talk about I'm on a mission. I'm a man of purpose. I believe that there are a certain amount of seconds assigned to my life. And so I have an allergy. I am allergic to random. Me and random are not friends. It doesn't mean that I'm not spontaneous sometimes, because I think spontaneity is nice. But ultimately, my life is governed by a sense of purpose, and that I was placed on this earth to make a difference with my life. And so when I'm looking to put things on my calendar, does it sustain territory? What I mean by that is that, I've been blessed to do a lot of things, to help a lot of people, to reach a lot of people, to touch a lot of people, and I don't want to lose ground that I have gained. And so does it sustain territory, or does it distract me in a way that I will lose some of the progress that I have made? And so when I say territory, I'm talking about progress. So I can't lose progress. I've got to keep moving forward. So does it sustain territory, or does it cause me to lose progress? The second thing is, does it gain territory? Now, I am acutely aware that I am not finished. That God's not finished with me. The reason why I still have breath in my body and breath in my life is because there's more to my life. And many things I am aware of, those things that I feel called to do. And so does this activity, meeting, phone call, whatever, is this connected to me gaining territory, to me progressing in my sense of purpose, identity, and calling? And if it doesn't, then I have to seriously consider not taking that meeting, because I only have a limited amount of time and energy. And then those things that serve others. I'm a servant. We're servants. We're called to serve people. And so me serving someone will never violate ground, territory that I've gained. It will never violate, new territory, because people, quite frankly, touching more people and serving more people is a part of how I progress and how I gain territory. These people belong to God, and God is trying to touch and reach every single person. And so the third question is, does this serve others? I've learned that if I serve others, God will serve me.
Wow. Well, I want to stay here and talk about the backside of being out of balance. We can gloss over this far too quickly and then find ourselves in a hole. We're all susceptible to bitterness and resentment. Again, I don't want to gloss over this too quickly. What are the devastating physical and emotional consequences to living in bitterness?
Bitterness is like the contamination of a well. If your life was a well, and the well was not only for your refreshing, for your hydration, but it was also to spring up out of you and to water and to refresh and to hydrate others. Bitterness is like putting poison in the well. So it harms you, and when it comes out of you, instead of nourishing and bringing health to those that are around you, it contaminates and creates a toxic situation for others. And oftentimes, the reason why people are bitter, a lot of times, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why people get bitter comes down to them not knowing who they are. And when you don't know who you are, you will oftentimes do things that you regret. In the chapter in the book, when I was talking about there's no team and I talked about being self-full, not selfish, but self-full, and the importance of prioritizing yourself. One of the downfalls of not doing that is because you will have sacrificed your life entirely trying to people please and trying to please and appease others, that you will look up one day and realize that you never built your life. And you'll be bitter at people and life and circumstances, feeling like all hope is gone because you didn't prioritize you. And so a lot of times the way that people become bitter is because they fail to prioritize themselves, or they won't say no. They're always saying yes. And yes is tricky, because yes is self-gratifying. It's gratifying immediately in the moment. But sometimes that same yes you gave in order to avoid conflict will come back and bite you later and make you bitter at yourself and the person that you should have said no to. And so
that comes with boundaries, right?
It comes with boundaries, absolutely. The boundaries are to help you, and others, to be honest with you, because I just believe, for me, boundaries qualify relationships, because some relationships only work because you're always saying yes.
Wow.
If we only have a good relationship because I am always saying yes because I'm a people pleaser, and now I decide to be true to myself and I say no and you fall apart, well, that relationship was not a good relationship. It wasn't a healthy relationship. So you need boundaries to protect you, but also to qualify whether or not the relationship is worthy of the attention that you're giving to it.
That's powerful. Okay. Because I've heard this statement for years: great leaders say no more than they say yes. And you propose a 90% no. Why?
Absolutely. And I realize that is a dramatic number. And I did that not simply for shock effect. I wanted to be dramatic. And the reason why I say you should say no 90% of the time, and of course I'm generalizing, but I'm very serious in my generalization, 90-10, 90 no, 10 yes, is because your yes is valuable. Your yes should be very expensive to you. Everyone can't walk into a Rolls Royce dealership and buy it. It can't happen. There's only a few because of the value of it. What I'm getting at is, and that's probably wasn't the best analogy, but what I'm getting at is your yes should be so expensive that you ration it out. And here's why it's expensive. Your yes commits you. It commits your time. It commits your energy. It commits your person. It commits the limited resource of you. And so if you're going to have valuable yeses to give, that means that you have to have a healthy amount of no's out there to protect the precious investment of your yes. Your yes is an investment. And I just believe that the majority of the things that come to you, particularly now in the age of email and social media and now with the cookie settings, and now things are just popping up at you. It's not simply saying no to people. It's saying no to things. You have to protect your yes, because it's very expensive.
How do we discern the best yes then, Toure? Because this is what we talked about earlier. With and under and through a fear motivation, we're susceptible to people pleasing. So we think,
Absolutely.
this might be a best yes, but we're not operating from wholeness. So how do you discern a best yes inside of the most important domains you have in your life, Monday through Sunday? What does that look like?
I love that question. The reason why I can discern quickly my best yes or the best yes to give is because I have a vision for my life. Mm-hmm. I'm not random in things that come my way. I have, listen, I don't know everything, but I have a general concept of why I'm here. I have a general concept of what I am pursuing in a given time, in a given moment. It is written down. Write the vision, make it plain. It's written down. My life is organized in such a way that I can immediately tell if something is worthy of my investment or not, because I have done the work to decide and to define where I'm headed. If I don't know where I'm headed, how will I know when something comes my way if I'm supposed to invest in it, take it, etc.? And so we live in a distracted world. And
Yes.
One of the things that cures distraction, there's one thing that cures distraction, and that is focus. Focus is the cure to distraction. So if I have my vision laid out, I know where I'm going, I stare at my vision every day. The more I stare at it, the clearer it becomes. If I stare at it every day, I can easily identify, no, that's not within the triangle of my purpose. This is not, I'm going to have to put that on the shelf. Maybe it will be one day, but I have a clear idea of what the current thrust of my life is. One of the things that I talked about recently in a message was, in your meditation time, you need to come out of your meditation time with some question answers. One, the first question you need to have answered is, who am I? Who am I? And sometimes it's who am I now, because as you evolve, you may not be today who you were yesterday. And it is important for you to show up as who you are and as you believe God and life is defining you as. Who am I now? In my previous season, I was on the sidelines, but I feel like in this season, I'm supposed to be, more in the front. In the previous season, I was an intrapreneur. But in this season, I believe I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur. In the previous season, I was an employee. But in this season, I feel like I'm supposed to be an employer. So who am I now is the first question. The second question is, what season am I in? You know what I mean? What season is this for me? We live in this rhythm of times and season. The great wise Solomon said there's a time for this and there's a time for that, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embrace. So I have to be diligent in my meditation time to discern what season I'm in, because that will tell me what is appropriate for me. And then what is my word? What impression has God been laying on me, in recent times? Because I just believe that God will always give you a hint or a sign or sometimes a flat out word of confirmation that is to undergird your efforts and your actions. So the reason why it becomes easier for me to know what to say no to is because I am looking for what to say yes to based on what I'm receiving in my time of meditation.
That's really helpful. And if I can, I'd like to clarify something just for the listeners, because when it comes to articulating vision and purpose and all that, what we're not talking about is just because I write something down and focus on it, it's going to manifest. Because we hear a lot about that in syncretic society, like, oh, I'm going to manifest this. No, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is having a focus point whereby we can discern priorities, to focus our energy, to focus our time and our resources so that we can say no to superfluous things, yes to things that move us in the direction of purpose and identity. Did I hear you correctly in that?
You absolutely right. This is not name it and claim it. This is not pie in the side,
exactly that.
Twirl around 2 times, click your heels,
Exactly.
and the mansion falls into your lap. No.
Right, exactly that.
Because you're worth more than that. Your life and your purpose and your identity is worth so much more than that.
Can I play devil's advocate for a sec with you?
Of course.
So let's say someone's listening and saying, hey, Touré, this sounds great, but you're the leader. You're the CEO of your company. You're the senior pastor, whatever. I work for someone. I'm 5 levels deep. I don't have control of my schedule per se. How do we flex this to them, and how do we empower them through this message?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely understand if you work for someone and then there has been an expectation set, whether contractually or otherwise, where you give your time. I completely get that. But here is the thing. You have to design your life around having the freedom to become yourself. I have a good friend by the name of Devon Franklin, and he is an author. He's a producer, a film and television producer, wonderful human being. I love him, one of my best friends in the whole world. Wow. And he was I'd say he is a devout Seventh-day Adventist, and they do not work on Saturdays whatsoever. And Devon was working on a huge movie. I think this was Karate Kid with Jaden Smith, and just a big movie. And they were all set and ready to go. And the head of production said, "Oh yeah, and so just kind of work on this Saturday." And Devon's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I can't do that." And now in Hollywood, now let me tell you something. What the director wants goes. I mean, everyone is kind of just following this whole thing. And Devon is like, I can't violate my principles. And he's done that several times. And in each time, and he can tell his own story, but in each time they have moved production around or have created scenarios where he didn't have to violate his principles. And so what I'm getting at is you are in control of your life. Your boss is not in control of your life. Your boss is not responsible for you finding balance. Your boss is not responsible for you having a great marriage, if that's what you want, or being a good father, or creating a legacy through starting your own entity or your own business. They're not responsible for that. You are. You are the CEO of your future. And so what I would say to that person is you may need to take one step back. I'm not saying quit. I'm saying take one step back, decide what you need to be your best. What is it going to take? What do you need as you start thinking about where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what you feel God has spoken to you about, or the things that you're pursuing? Maybe you don't have a clear direction, but maybe your vision is to create space so that you can get clear direction. You have to take a step back, decide what you need, come up with a plan, and then find a way to implement the plan. And you would be surprised, to that person who's working for someone, there is a paradigm shift in corporations right now where employers are understanding now that the wellness of their employees contributes positively to the bottom line. So the very thing that you're worried about, if you're saying, hey, you're not being a slacker, you're being excellent in your work, and you're saying, hey, and maybe it's wisdom, hey, you know what? I believe I can put out 30% more productivity if I boom, 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 boom. They're going to listen to that because at the end of the day, they want to see productivity and bottom line. So all that to say, you're in control, and sometimes you have to take a hard stand, maybe sometimes giving a no, to create the type of atmosphere and environment that you can thrive in.
It's so good. And guys, the book is Balance, Positioning Yourself to Do All Things Well. He is Touré Roberts. Touré, this has been such a rich conversation today, and I'd love to leave the listeners with a take-home, with a call to action. What do they need to know? What do they need to do today to take that next step toward experiencing balance in their lives?
I think that they need to have the courage to stop. Sometimes people think it takes more faith to go, to leap out, to do something. No, I've learned it takes a greater measure of faith to stop, to believe that you have permission to stop, to assess, to evaluate, to listen. That's where the faith comes in. But if you do, you will discover a world of things that you may have been missing in your hustle and bustle and your busyness on the hamster wheel. Perhaps one thing that could change your life forever.
It's
Have
so powerful.
the courage to stop.
It's so good. Touré, this has been such a rich conversation. I'd love for people to stay connected to you and to your work. How can people do that?
My website is toureroberts.com. I'm on all of the social media platforms at Toure, Toure Roberts. The Balance Book is thebalancebook.com, and it's out on the 26th, but people can start reading it right away. I'm just excited about this book. I'm excited about the work that you're doing, and
Thanks,
it's just
Touré.
wonderful to connect with someone else who's all about changing lives.
Awesome. Well, Touré, thank you for being here today.
Honored.